What's up, grinders? This video is being made a little bit later than normal, if you can't tell by the beautiful lighting in this room right now. I was basically out all day tile shopping with my wife. Highly do not recommend tile shopping. It is not exactly a fun experience, and in fact, I did not know so many tiles existed. But I am now back, and I'm going to do another video review, and this time we're going to review something that should be very uplifting and make me feel very happy about my life. We're going to look at why I hate conlangs. Okay, if you guys have been following me for long enough, you probably realize by now that I am a lover of conlangs. For those who don't know, conlang, constructed language. I really love constructed languages. In fact, I pretty much love all languages. Like, I am not biased towards any particular language. I like constructed languages, I like natural languages, I like programming languages, hell, spellcasting languages, which is constructed languages, I guess, but, you know, to some people, they're actually deemed as magical. But I am fascinated in everything and anything to do with languages. So when I see someone make a video called Why I Hate Conlangs, I have to really question, why would you hate something? Like, did you have a bad experience with conlangs? Were you like at school or something and one day, you know, during recess, some like conlang touched you behind the shed and you can't look at conlangs the same ever again? Like, I get it, man. Like, there's some weird conlangs out there like Volapük, but like, you can't paint us all with the same brush. So let's check out this video.
Here's why I don't like conlangs. A conlang is a
Okay, so we've gone from hate to I don't like conlangs. Okay.
constructed language or an invented language like Dothraki for Game of Thrones, or Quenya, the Elvish language in Lord of the Rings, or even Esperanto, which is designed to be a language of broader communication. Let me start.
Okay, so first up, he's only covered realistically 2 branches of conlangs, and for those who are not in the conlang world, let me break it down for you. So he spoke first about artlangs. Artlangs are basically languages that have been created as part of an artistic expression. So, for example, Dothraki was created for a TV show. Then you've got, he mentioned like the Lord of the Rings ones, and then you've also got like Klingon. Most of you have probably heard about Klingon. It literally exists for a TV show. That's why it was created. It's an artistic language. Then he mentioned Esperanto, which is a language I'm fluent in. This was created as an auxiliary language, but it was created so long ago that it's now kind of evolved into a subculture and people learn it for all sorts of reasons. But he hasn't covered off on all the branches, and there's one branch that I want to talk about, and some people are going to agree with me that this is a branch of like conlangs, and some people are going to go against me, but this is my thoughts on the matter. He hasn't spoken about reconstructed or revived languages. Now, why do I classify reconstructed and revived languages essentially as conlangs? Because some aspect of them had to be recreated when they were reborn, and the language that's spoken will basically never be the same as the language that once was. Now, whether that's important, that distinction, or not, because, you know, languages go under natural evolution once they are actually out there in the world, and that's the same for conlangs, by the way. Esperanto has undergone forms of evolution. You don't believe me? Go watch my video where I talk about the evolution of the word computer in Esperanto. That is a fascinating video. I'll drop it in the pinned link down below. But let's go back to what we were talking about, reconstructed languages. An example here is Hebrew. It basically died as the language of the spoken community, but remained in use as a language of basically religious reasons. But then it was, in an essence, reconstructed, part of it was, or filled in order for this language to become a language of basically an entire country now, Israel. But if you don't believe me that's a good example, we could take a step back and we could go look at Cornish. So Cornish is a language that basically died out. It had one speaker left, and they basically revived the entire language based on, you know, that speaker. And there's been debates about, you know, how things should be written and all this type of stuff, and how certain words should be pronounced, because, well, they don't know. So they had to make assumptions. But if you still don't believe me, let's take one step even further back. There is an Australian Aboriginal language from South Australia. I literally learned about this one at a language festival the other day that was reconstructed based on 3 words. So how do you reconstruct an entire language based on 3 words? Well, they had 3 words, obviously, that were written down. However, the language of the historical region where it's been revived, or as Professor Gillard Zuckerman, who's a famous linguist, would say, a sleeping beauty brought back to life, rewoken. The way that it was done is basically they look at the languages that were adjacent to that language that still exist, and they make assumptions about the actual language. Now, obviously, if you took speakers of this revived language and somehow magically brought back a speaker from the old days and put them next to each other, they'd probably not be able to communicate. It would be a different language, but everyone will keep it with the same name. It is still a reconstructed language, essentially a constructed language. Now, I wanted to go down that rabbit hole because A lot of people just only have a very, very cursory top-level view of this thing. And me, I am down in the weeds. I love this shit. Now, I do want to stress, even though we're only 12 seconds into this video, that you don't have to go learn a conlang. I don't make these videos and talk about conlangs because I want you to go learn a constructed language. I just find this topic friggin' fascinating, and I like to share my fascination with the world. If you have no interest in it, no interest in Esperanto or any constructed language, I don't give a shit. Don't learn it. Learn the language you want to learn. Whatever interests you, I support it. If you're interested in, Cornish, go learn it, man. I fully support you. If you want to learn Mandarin Chinese, I'm learning Mandarin Chinese. Let's be buddies. I fully support you. You don't have to learn anything. But the one thing that annoys me about this video is that why I hate conlangs is the equivalent of saying why I hate minority languages or why I hate X language. It's a stupid title for a video. It's just stupid.
Start by saying that I don't hate conlangs themselves.
And if you don't hate conlangs, then why make a video titled Why I Hate Conlangs?
They're interesting, they're fun, they're an art form, they allow us to explore interesting ideas. Nonetheless, there are 3 reasons why I'm not...
You know what? I feel like he wants to say he hates conlangs. That's why he titled the video. But then as he's making the video, he feels like he has to, hold back a little bit. Lots of people do this, where they will, in writing, say their true thoughts. But then when they're actually forced to speak these words to a camera and express them, they will reserve it and pull it back and be like, well, I don't like them. But no, he actually hates them.
I'm not a huge fan of conlangs, and this is why I don't tend to talk about them on my channels. First off,
here's another thing. If you're not a huge fan about them, then just don't talk about them. Who cares? If you're not interested in it, you wouldn't talk about it. But if you actually are against it in some way, you're going to talk about it, which therefore means Why I Hate Conlangs is probably a more accurate title for this video than what he just said of I'm not really interested in conlangs.
For me at least, compared to real languages in the world, conlangs are kind of...
Here's another thing. He used the term real language, okay? Real is the opposite of fake. There's a reason why someone uses the word real. It's because they're trying to degrade the thing that they're talking about. You could just say it's an artificial language. It's a created language, a constructed language. But real implies that it doesn't exist. When it does. There is thousands of people who speak Esperanto. In fact, there's 2,000 people who natively speak it. It is the language of their mum and dad, and it's been passed on through generations, okay? So using the term real is just insulting to them. Saying that their language is not real. That's just insulting to them. Why be insulting? Just say, as opposed to natural languages or man-made languages. No one would care about that. But real has a sub-meaning, and that sub-meaning is it's fake.
Of boring. Natural languages already do so many fascinating, complicated, exotic things that a lot of times conlangers don't even think of. Now,
okay, so he's obviously looking at this from the perspective of someone creating a constructed language. Who cares if a real language does all these fascinating, interesting things? People create languages for all sorts of reasons. This is the equivalent of saying, that form of art is shit because it doesn't use this technique from another form of art. Who cares?
Good conlangers do their research and they go understand and learn about the diversity of the world's languages.
What is a good conlanger? Okay, learn about the diversity of the world's languages, but there's certain languages that were created for a very specific purpose. Klingon was created based on a TV show. What are they going to go research? He's going to get in a spaceship and fly to the outer space and go speak with the Klingons? No. And in fact, Klingon is actually quite fascinating in how it was created because it chose specifically the most rare components from every language, or tried to make it as alien as possible.
Languages. But even so, I've never really seen a conlang that comes close to approximating the kind of depth, richness, and beauty of a natural language.
This is highly subjective, obviously. For me, there is so much literature in Esperanto, so many people who speak the language, I will never speak with them all, and I will never read everything in my life. It's literally impossible. So it's already more rich and deeper than I could ever go. Deeper than I could ever go. Oh my god.
A lot of conlangs wind up looking a lot like Indo-European languages or other major languages.
And why is that a bad thing? If someone wants to make a language that looks like an Indo-European language, who cares? Realistically. And also, this makes sense because most people who are interested in conlangs and stuff like that, they come from either a society or a family where they have the means or the free time to be able to engage in this type of artistic expression. People from extremely poor areas have other things that they need to worry about. This is not a priority for them. But what the funny thing is, Esperanto is kind of unique in that regard, that there is super poor regions in Africa where literally that language is spoken within a small community, just due to historical reasons of how this language spread around that part of the world. So it's not even true in all cases.
because conlangers just don't know the diversity of other ways that languages can be.
Why is this a problem? Like, who cares if there's a specific way of doing something?
The second reason I'm not a huge fan of conlangs is because sometimes I think they distort our understanding of how languages actually work.
That makes no sense.
Conlangs tend to be neat and tidy and regular. Maybe their creators throw some exceptions and irregularities in, but it's this tidy.
So we're against conlangs because conlangs are tidy, even though that's not true. Lots of conlangs are designed to be a complete and utter mess and very difficult to work with. For example, Klingon. Other languages are designed to be tidy because that is literally their purpose, to be an easy-to-learn language. Why would you make an easy-to-learn language and then fill it with irregularities? This makes no sense.
Thing that you create, and real language is not like that at all.
Bro, you got to stop mixing up real language.
Natural languages are messy and riddled with exceptions and shaped by human cognition.
So he's using the term real as opposed to natural, okay? I don't think real is the good term here because it has that subcontext of opposed to fake. It's not the good opposite of natural. You can just say constructed languages.
They are complex adaptive systems.
And this complex adaptive system stuff, that makes no sense because realistically, Esperanto's been around for 150 years. It's undergone evolution. I've made an entire video about how Esperanto, the word for computer in this language, basically evolved over time, and there was multiple forms that were all competing to basically be the word of the community. And in fact, the word that won out was the word that was not wanted by the academics, the well-known speakers of Esperanto at the time. It was like the word of the community. I have a whole video about this. See it. It'll be pinned in the comment below.
They're not neat and tidy things. I think conlangs also sometimes give the impression that language is something that can be controlled, and it's not.
Okay, as soon as someone creates a language, if they speak with themselves, they have control. As soon as you bring one more person into the equation, you lose some form of control. And if you try to hold on to that control, that language will never spread. And we have historical evidence to back this up. Volapük, which is a language that preceded Esperanto, a constructed language, actually gained some popularity. The creator of that language tried to hold on to control. And what happened was it fractured the community, caused infighting, caused almost like cultish behavior in some cases, and the language died. Although some people study it for historical reasons to this day. Languages like Esperanto, where the creator stepped back and didn't try to hold any control, flourished. It's the same thing with Tokipona. The creator of Tokipona, Jan Sonja, also stepped back and doesn't try to control the language, and it flourished. So this doesn't really make sense because we know that you can't control a language.
A lot of times scholars or politicians will try and use language as a means to impose their particular vision on society because they think that they can control language, and by controlling language they can control how people think. But
this is in no way related to conlangs.
The reality is that nobody really controls language.
And exactly what he said. No one controls language, so what are you talking about?
It's a set of conventions that emerge from the millions of interactions that we have when we speak or sign.
So the only difference between a conlang that has existed for a long time and a natural language is that we know where the language started and we know how it was created. But as soon as it was created and it starts being used by a community, and specifically when it starts getting native speakers, which Esperanto has got, it starts to undergo evolution. It's small. You don't see it maybe so much, specifically now with the internet where that helps standardize things, but it does undergo evolution. Interesting changes you can see in the history of Esperanto all the way up today to today. There is actual differences. If you look back at the original text of Esperanto, there is words that have fallen out of usage. There is specific usage of affixes, which is more common back then as opposed to now, like the use of the ad suffix, which basically represents, something is a continuous action. It was used way more back in the early days of Esperanto and less so now. And then you've also just got conventions around how things are formed. Like you've got chi til, which means here, and til chi, which means here. It's the same thing, they're just the chi parts moved around. Zamenhof and early users and proponents of the language would say til chi, but nowadays chi til is more common. These slight little things have changed, and there's lots more. There's the evolution of even the sound system in Esperanto, where the h sound, like a throaty H sound, was quite common in early Esperanto, has almost died off at this point.
Every single day. The economist Friedrich Hayek once described language as something that is the result of human action, but not of human design. Natural language is not something that can be designed. And the biggest...
That is not what natural language is. Natural language is just a language that has come about as form of natural processes, people just communicating.
The reason that I don't give any space to conlangs on my channels is because there's so many real endangered indigenous languages out there.
And you know what? That's great. You want to support indigenous languages? I am all for it. In fact, you will probably find among conlangers more supporters of indigenous languages as opposed to those outside the conlang community. Because I'll give you a real world example of this right now. So here in Sydney, about a week ago, we had the Sydney Language Festival, where there was about 15 teachers who came up, like teachers, proponents, came up and spoke about languages. Pretty much every language that was spoken about was some indigenous language from somewhere around the world. Hell, I was there and I spoke about Cherokee, because I find Cherokee to be a bloody fascinating language. I have not learnt it, but it is on my bucket list. Now, I speak Esperanto, but I spoke about Cherokee at this festival because I thought that was interesting. One person spoke about Esperanto, everyone else spoke about indigenous languages, but I believe at least 10 of the 15 people who were there speaking about languages were also Esperanto speakers.
That could use the attention so much more. These are languages spoken by communities that are working hard.
So he's created a false binary here. He's saying, if you're learning a conlang, you don't have time to learn an indigenous language. I just proved that wrong. So this is a load of crap.
Really hard to revitalize their languages again, to bring them back, to teach them to their kids again. I've seen entire communities of conlangers come together and create giant dictionaries of these fictional languages when indigenous language communities...
If someone wants to create a dictionary for an artificial language, depending on the language, okay, let's say an art lang, if you took that language away from them, you're taking away their artistic expression. That does not mean they're automatically then going to go learn an indigenous language. That's not necessarily going to happen. They may just go learn a normal language like Chinese. Normal language, now I'm using the wrong terms. They may go learn a large economically powerful language like Chinese as opposed to a small indigenous language which is struggling. So you're creating a division between these two communities that does not exist.
Communities are struggling to find the same resources and the types of people who are willing to do that same kind of work. It makes me so frustrated that Google Translate supports languages like Esperanto, which has few, possibly no native speakers.
He obviously did no research here. Esperanto has roughly 1,000 to 2,000 native speakers, possibly more, because the estimates are from very long ago. If you don't know what I mean by native speaker, because some people get confused about that, these are kids who have grown up, their first language, or their, maybe they're bilingual, is Esperanto, because their mum and dad both speak this language. That is the common language of the family, because maybe one's from one country and others from another country. They met at some communal Esperanto event. Happens all the time. It's not that strange of a thing. So Esperanto native speakers exist, so I don't know why he's talking about that.
But not Navajo, which is an indigenous endangered language.
Oh, okay, so I almost lost my train of thought there. Why are you shitting on conlangers? They've got nothing to do with Google. Google's literally supports Esperanto because there is so much literature for that language. It is very easy to create a translation system for that language. There is, I think, something like, I'm probably way off my numbers, like maybe underestimating here, but 35,000 published works in Esperanto. These are like books, both original and translated. Now, I don't know how many published books there are in Navajo. Maybe there's just not enough. Maybe the speakers of the Navajo community just haven't pushed Google. Like, Esperanto speakers are very proud about their language. They love their heritage, like, for those who are native speakers. So they work to promote these things. Maybe someone at Google was an Esperanto speaker and just worked on getting that language in there. If you're not happy with Google, go make a video saying why I hate Google, not why I hate conlangs.
With over 100,000 speakers. Something's wrong with that picture. So as much as possible on this channel, I really try and highlight indigenous and especially endangered languages.
That's great, Highlight them as much as you want. Promote them as much as you want. Just don't fucking gatekeep and try and shit on other communities.
So that's kind of why I'm not a huge fan of conlangs. Like, yes, they're
okay, so you're not a huge fan of conlangs, but you titled the video, Why I Hate Conlangs.
Fun, I get into them myself. But on the whole, I'd really love to see more focus and attention being given to the real languages in the world that could really use that attention. And if you
that term, real languages, man, come on. You know this is insulting.
Feel the same way and want to help shift that attention to languages that need it, I think one of the best things you can do is learn a language that helps give a minority group access.
Nothing wrong with that. Totally promote that. I'm more than happy, for people to work towards that goal. I have worked with the Language Festival Association here in helping multiple minority languages get attention.
Learn American Sign Language.
Learn American Sign Language, okay. One of my best mates here in Sydney is an Esperanto speaker. He is also an Auslan user and also happens to be a Tokipona speaker. So this is not a binary choice.
Learn the local indigenous language by taking language classes at your community college. Learn any minority language.
Also, this learn the local indigenous language, this is not always the case. You can't always just do this. An example of this was when I was in Tasmania, I actually reached out to a group that were working on the revival of the Australian Aboriginal language for that region. And I said, I wanted to learn this language. I was curious. And this was many, many years ago. And I've got an email and everything. And they asked me if I was of Aboriginal heritage. And I said, no, I'm not. Like, I have no Aboriginal blood in me at all. And they said, well, then you can't learn the language. The people who can learn it are the ones of Aboriginal heritage. And I was like, okay, well, I respect that. Like, if you just want to keep it within your community. So you can't just go around and say, oh, go learn the local language. Maybe they don't even want you.
It gives people more access. It doesn't force them to speak to you in the major languages that you're speaking. It validates their language as being worth learning. And you'll probably come to appreciate just how really cool these natural languages are even more.
I'm pretty sure most conlangers already think like languages are cool because they're out here creating languages because they think languages are cool. And from what I know, most conlangers try to inject too much random crap into their languages. The issue is not that they create languages that are basically European languages. It's that they sit there and they go, how can I make this so weird? I'm going to add like 6 variants of clicks into this language. And again, he's got the title at the end here, Why I Hate Conlangs. But during the video, he said he just doesn't like them. This is something that annoys me. If you hate conlangs, when you make your video, own up to it and say, I hate conlangs. If you don't make such a shitty clickbait title. There's nothing wrong with making clickbait titles. I do it all the time. As long as it's like for the fun factor. You're not just out here trolling or being an asshole to other communities. So basically, my summary here, for all those out there, you do not have to go learn Esperanto or any conlang. I do not want you to learn something if you don't want to learn it. I want you to learn whatever language it is that you're interested in and put your full heart into it. I support you. And the point of this channel, as of recently, at least over the last year or so, has been to try and encourage people to work towards their goals while also shitting on those frauds out there so you don't feel bad about working towards your goals. Now, I haven't had to up to this point, but I also really don't like people who try to gatekeep this fucking shit. Languages are there for everyone. I don't care what language it is. You can learn it. I support you. So don't make these fucking shit videos, especially if you're wanting people to come out here and support whatever cause it is that you've got. By doing this, you're not winning people over. I guarantee you this video has more dislikes than likes. Unfortunately, YouTube's hidden it and I don't have any plugins to show, but that's basically my thoughts on the matter. So if you guys like this video, you guys know what you need to do. Like it. There's a Discord. Join it. If you don't join it, well then I'm going to violently stab you behind a dark alley so that you have a really bad image of conlangs.